It's the Black Real Estate Dialogue. Tune in. Tune in. Tune in. Tune in.
Hi, everyone. Welcome to another episode of the Black Real Estate Dialogue podcast. Before we get into this episode, please take a moment to leave us a 5-star rating and review. It helps us out a whole lot, helps us spread this message across the world, reach more people. And I'll also give you a shout out. So if you leave a review, I'll give you a shout out. Looking forward to hearing from you all. So excited about this episode. This is a two-time guest. This is her second time on the show. I have with me Kendra Barnes out of San Antonio, and Kendra was actually a guest on episode 4. So from the very, very beginning, back in 2019. So Kendra, thank you so much. I really appreciate you coming on the show again.
Yes, thank you for having me back.
Definitely. So let's jump right into it. Acres. Acres is the big thing that you're working on right now. So I'd love to hear more about the project, more about the book, and start there.
Yeah, so Acres is the first book I've ever written, but it's so special because it's not even just about me. It's about 25 young Black real estate investors who have built wealth from the ground up. And it's not just any book, it's a coffee table book. So it's like lots of pictures, heavy on like the art, heavy on like the imagery and the stories as well. And so it's something you're going to want to have on your coffee table. It's like a centerpiece, like a discussion, a point of discussion. It's something you want to show off in your homes. So I'm excited about that. And it's Black history. Like this is Black history, right? So I can't wait to get that into everybody's hands. But I've been working on it for over 2 years now.
Wow.
So
Wow. So
yeah.
that's quite a long time and quite a lot of dedication. Can you talk to us about what inspired it? Like what made you want to collect all these amazing stories and put it in the form of a book?
I was just thinking about how powerful, like what we're witnessing right now on social media, on the internet is like this new Black renaissance, right? Like investing is cool. We are now seeing what I'm calling like normalizing Black wealth, right? It's very common for us to see like, oh, this person owns 3 properties and they're not even 30 yet. But I'm like, why aren't we writing these down? Why aren't we treating this like the Black history it is, right? I think when you think of Black history, it's always these people that were like here decades ago and they did these huge things, but this is also huge. What we're doing, we're breaking barriers. We are building wealth despite all the systematic things that were put in place for us to fail. And so I decided to tell these stories in a really beautiful way. You know how like back in the day, we used to have those encyclopedias, right?
Yeah.
Like volumes and volumes of history and information. That's the same plan I have for Acres. So this is just volume 1. This tells the story of 25 people. I have a list already for the future volumes of Acres because there's so many stories to tell. And my plan is to really inspire and empower others to do the same. So through these books, I'm like humbled to be able to tell these stories. I'm really excited.
Definitely. I think it's an incredible thing to get it in such a tangible form that someone
Yeah.
can truly have for life. You know, like we all have our bookcases and book collections, and so I think it's just amazing that the multiple volumes that have come out over the years, that this is a piece of history that we'll all get to hold. So what is that? What was the process like for you? Just going from the idea to getting those who you wanted to include in it, and then of course getting to the point where it is now and preparing to I know you have the pre-orders right now, which we'll have a link for. Again, it's like the pre-order stage and to the finish line. What was that process like?
Yeah, it's crazy because I have self-published this book. And so that's
Wow.
been like a whole thing on its own. And I'm really proud to say that not only am I an author, but I've self-published it. I've learned so much. But this has come so naturally to me, like telling these stories and putting it all together. Because if you think about it, I don't know if anyone's listening that has been following me for a while, or if you've even seen some of my journey. as well. When I first started my Instagram account, I was telling my story like, hey, this is how I got started. This is what I do. This is how I bought my first rental. But then as I started coming across like other people in the space, like people who look like me, I'm like, oh, dang, I want to tell their story too. So I would literally DM like Black people on Instagram that I didn't know that were talking about real estate. I'm like, can I repost your story on my page? Like my audience needs to see this, because what I learned is like, my story is unique. It's inspiring, it's empowering, but everybody does it differently. You do different things that maybe I haven't done, right? And so people need to hear your story too. So I would start sharing these stories on Instagram. Then I started hosting online summits where I'm like, well, let's teach my audience together, right? And it's just evolved like over the years. And I said, let me take it a step further. Let's put this stuff in print. Like once you put it in print, it's there forever. Like this is something that can be passed down from generation to generation. So that's kind of like another point of like how the idea evolved. I've literally been doing this from the time I created my Instagram account in like 2015. I've been so like just passionate about telling other people's stories too. So, but the book really came to fruition by me doing a bunch of audio interviews similar to what we're doing now, getting those transcribed, and then really formatting it in a way that was like a seamless story. And so it's not like a Q&A type thing. It's literally like telling their story from the beginning to where they are now for each of these people. It's paired with like beautiful, powerful pictures of them in front of their properties. And it's just like, it's beautiful. It's like a really, really, it's art. It's really art.
Definitely love it. Can't wait to check that out. And definitely encourage everybody to make sure you grab a copy. The link will be down below, but make sure you're in on this history. It's just the beginning. So very, very exciting stuff. So it's been a couple of years. How has and for those who, if you want the full backstory, definitely go to episode 4. But could you just give a Cliff Notes version of your real estate journey? And then I have just a couple of questions about how things have been over the last couple of years.
Yes. So I got into real estate investing in 2014 in Washington, D.C., bought our first duplex there, didn't know what we were doing, right? Made all the mistakes that first timers make. And it's crazy because back then, like, there were no Black real estate podcasts. Okay. Real estate investing education meant you were going to some hotel on the weekend, learning from what probably would be white men. And at the end of it, they would upsell you some $30,000 program. That was real estate education back then. And so we just dove right in. My husband and I bought a duplex. We ran the most basic numbers you could ever imagine. Thankfully, it was actually a good deal. We didn't really know that. And once we saw how much money we could make, I was like, oh, we need to do this again. So we did it again and again. We ended up house hacking that house hack. So we bought a duplex. We didn't house hack that duplex. We bought a fourplex. We house hacked that. That house hack really set us up to be able to leave our government jobs. So we retired from the 9-to-5 life. I was 32 at the time. And our plan was to be nomads and travel the world for about a year, but we ended up being pregnant. And so we were like, okay, change of plans. And we moved to San Antonio, Texas, to be closer to family. But that's like the really short Cliff Note version of like our real estate story.
Definitely. And something that I like to discuss more about that is, a lot of people, it seems like for a lot of us, it's out of reach. The thought that we could, one, buy a property, or two, build our portfolio to a point where it can help us move on to other things, like write books and work on our businesses and things of that nature. So can you talk about just, when you realized that you two were on that track and it's something that was possible? Like, what was that like?
Man, once we realized that like buying a rental property was something we could do, it's like, why didn't anybody tell us this? Why is this something that our families weren't talking about and encouraging us to do? And I think our generation, we were like fit into this, like we had to fit into a box, go to school, get a good job, work. Like that was the American dream. Our generation now is shifting that. So I feel like for our kids, they're going to feel differently about it, right? They're going to have different options. But anyway, once we got that first rental property, we had a tenant in one side already. We inherited a tenant. The other side was empty. By a complete, in complete desperation, we ended up putting the property on Airbnb. We made, I think, $4,000 in a month. And we're like, what? We could replace our salaries. That was only on one side of the duplex. So this is Washington, D.C. So it's a huge tourist city. So you have to keep that in mind. When I'm talking numbers, DC numbers ain't gonna be like Detroit numbers, and it ain't gonna be like Cleveland numbers. Like it's really real in DC, right? Yeah. So, and I had always been trying to leave my job. I always hated my job. This is not 9 to 5 bashing for anyone listening. If you love your job, that is a blessing. I did not. And I was always side hustling, but side hustling never got me free because there's only so much time in the day, right? I was always still exchanging time for money. When I saw that money from the rental property, I'm like, oh, we can, like, I'm ready to go down. Like, I want to leave. Yeah. And so we just decided to like really scale and make the moves to leave. But I think that was it for us, seeing that we could replace our salary so easily, like replace our monthly income so easily.
Definitely. And how did it feel? Like just that last day walking out? Like just knowing that, we can move on. I can move on to the next chapter of my life, and we can just do other things. Like what did that feel like? And was it hard to stay motivated in the last couple of weeks?
It was, okay, well, I'm gonna answer your first question first. I can't remember if the last time we talked, was I still working or not? Probably not. I probably had just left.
Yeah.
But we actually probably could have left about 3 years before we did. And in some moments it was frustrating because I was really ready to go. My husband's very patient. He's like, no, let's wait. Because as you know, like with real estate, there's ups and downs. There's tenant, there's a vacancy, there's turnover, there's like repairs and stuff like that. So he's like, let's make sure we really have enough savings and we really know what we're doing so that when we do leave, we're not like strapped for cash and stuff like that. And so there were days at work when it felt good to know that like, I don't have to be here. Like I'm here and y'all giving me a lot of crap today, but I could walk out right now. Like just to have that power felt really good. And then I think, what was the other question? How did it feel to leave? And then,
so it was like the last day. Like, how did that feel?
Oh yeah, it was crazy because I put in my 2 weeks notice actually the day before the government shut down. Remember that government shut down? And I think it was like 2009. I think it happened in 2018, and then it carried in. Anyway, it was like 30 days the government was shut down. I didn't know it was going to happen, and I put my 2 weeks notice in, and the government ended up being shut down, so it didn't get processed. And so we were literally just like at home. Wow. And so it got processed like once the government opened back up. And then I actually, that was the beginning of 2019. So I actually left in February of 2019 after that long government shutdown. It was crazy. So I got a few extra weeks of paycheck that I wasn't expecting because they had to back pay us.
Right. Definitely. It's crazy. So how's it been since then, since 2019? Like how's real estate been for you? Have you changed anything that you've done? Have you noticed any changes in the markets where you invest back east? What's that been like?
Yeah, the pandemic was really tough for us because we moved to San Antonio literally a couple of months before the pandemic hit. And we had, of course, no idea, like nobody did. We thought that we'd be able to, our plan was really to like go back and forth freely between here and DC and like check on our properties and stuff. My husband's a very like hands-on kind of person. We self-manage. So, but when we had a small baby, like a brand new baby, it didn't feel safe to travel. And so we went like almost a year without even laying eyes on our properties, which is not normal for us. And we ended up selling 2 properties, which honestly, like at first, I didn't really want to talk about it. This is like the first time I'm actually talking about it because I felt like I had to uphold this idea of like never sell, like this and that, like you shouldn't sell. But it was just the right thing for us because we weren't able to like get there as much as we could. Those 2 properties were a little more high maintenance. And it was a seller's market and we got paid very well for them.
I'm sure.
It was crazy. So, and so now we're like shifting our focus to invest closer to home. We're here in San Antonio now for the foreseeable future. And so that was the good thing though about the pandemic, is that none of our tenants were late because of it. None of our tenants were not paying rent because of it. I know a lot of landlords had tenants that weren't paying or paying late or all that kind of stuff. We didn't have that problem at all. We had Section 8 tenants, which that money was coming no matter what. We had travel nurses, you know, which they were getting paid more during the pandemic. We also had like our regular tenants worked for the government. And so government was still getting paid. So thankfully, thank God, we still had all of our tenants paying. It was just like for us not being able to get there and getting the offers we did. We're like, yeah, that's one of the benefits of ownership though, honestly, is that you do have options. Like you can cash out, you know, if you want to, and we did do that. So really though, my life now is completely run by my 2-year-old. So it's like, what do you do? I'm like, I chase a 2-year-old around all day. Thankfully, I have the freedom to do that, but it's wild. It is legitimately really crazy.
I bet. So I want to go back to something that you said I think is very important. So, you know, a lot of people feel like, oh, you should never sell. I'm never selling. I'm always hold my properties. And I think it's important to have diversity of thought. I think it's important to look at things from different angles. And you also never know like what position you might be in where it's like, maybe it is a good time to sell. So can you talk a bit more about that? Because you did mention you felt like you had to like uphold this not selling and talk to us about like what led to the point where you're like, you know what, this is actually a great decision for us right now, and this is how we're going to proceed. And of course, you know, it worked out pretty well for you in this market.
It did. So we started feeling like, okay, real estate is considered passive income, right? But we all know that it's not always passive, right? There's going to be like weeks and days when you do nothing, and there are some weeks when you do a lot. But for us, it started feeling really stressful, like, you know, with these 2 particular properties. And it wasn't that stressful for us when we were there. And so, because I think you have properties out of state, right? Like that's where your whole portfolio is out of state. Yeah. For some properties, for some portfolios, for some market situations, it works. And for us, for these 2, we're just like, I don't know. We just didn't feel as passive as it should have been. So we're like, let's just let it go. Like, so that's how we ended up like coming to that decision when it wasn't as passive as we wanted it to feel. And we felt like we could cash out and do other things and kind of live a lifestyle that we preferred. And that's the power of it. And when we looked at the return on our investment, it was insane. I mean,
I believe you.
The numbers are crazy. The way that DC has like gentrified in the past few years and like what we put into it and things like that, the cash flow we had gotten out of it, and then what we made selling it, it just made sense for us. And now we're still like reinvesting it. We're investing in stocks. We've invested in real estate investment trusts. We're going to buy some more properties. So it just made sense.
Right. And that's, you know, what you mentioned at the end is something that is important for people to think about too, because it's like, you know, there are those who might sell a property and just blow all the money, right? Spend all of it on lifestyle. However, you just mentioned it can flow to another asset, right? So you mentioned stocks, you mentioned REITs, and I know you're in the Fundrise, and you can also have some money on the sideline for other investment opportunities, other properties. So you can just take it from one thing to another. So I think that's something else that's important for people to consider. If you have a plan with what you will receive at the sale, it can work out for you and you can keep it going for the long term.
Are you looking for a community of like-minded individuals and access to experts in real estate? Yeah. Are you interested in real estate but need more support and guidance? You know who it is. The Black Real Estate Dialogue presents the Real Estate Investing Community. No matter how much or how little real estate experience you have, we've created a community for you because your perspective is important. All right, tell me, where's the #1 place where you can do Q&A with experienced guest speakers 2 times per month, How about unlimited access to past guest speakers' recordings? What about a private Slack channel to engage in daily discussion with everybody in the community to share resources and support each other? Head on over to blackrealestatedialogue.com. That's blackrealestatedialogue.com. It's the real estate investing community presented by the Black Real Estate Dialogue. Come join us today.
Yeah, definitely. But it was like one of those things, like that stigma of like the never sell and all that kind of stuff. And so it's tough. That's one thing about social media, I feel like, is I tell people all the time, like, don't get into this comparison thing. Like, my story isn't going to look exactly like yours, but I fall into it too. I mean, I have real estate investor friends who it seems like they buy a new property every week.
Right.
And I'm just like, I cannot keep up. But every investor is different. Every market is different. Everyone's goals are different. Like, even what retirement, what we planned it to look like for us is different from someone else. Like, I know someone who has 38 rental units right now. And she's like, I'm nowhere near retirement, because for her, like, it's going to look very different from what we expected. For us, we're like, we're going to retire from the 9 to 5. We're going to get ourselves free, but that's just the beginning. Like, now we're actually free to make money in a way that we love, like no longer working for anyone else. We can build something from the ground up, doing what we want to do when we want to do it. So we didn't leave our 9 to 5 thinking we'll just never do anything for the rest of our life. We're just going to drink coconuts and just like sit on the beach for the next 30 years. For us, it was just the beginning, that first step to get free. So now we can do what we want on our terms.
Definitely. I love that. And, I think people should understand, you just got to run your own race. Like, you are not a failure if, you have one door and it's been 3 years till you get your next one. Like, everyone is not the same. Like, everyone's race is not the same. Everyone's market is not the same. Everyone's financing is not the same. Like, it may take time to get where you want to go, but just because you're not going at the pace somebody else is going doesn't mean you're not doing well. It doesn't mean you're not doing progress. So I really appreciate your transparency just with your story. And I think it's going to encourage a lot of people to just keep going. Yeah,
thank you. And talking about like the different markets and things like that, I think you said you have out of state properties. Like, I'm here, I am asking you a question on your own podcast, but how often do you go visit? How often do you go visit your properties?
Yeah, so I have I have a property in Ohio. The last time I visited there was in 2020. So in October 2020. Wow. November 2020. And so since then I've had to I had to do a pretty extensive rehab last year. I fired my property manager, so I had to place a tenant. So I've been learning a whole lot.
Wow.
Thank God I have this woman named Courtney. Courtney, if you're listening, thank you. She helps me out a lot. Like, she helped me to show the property. Sometimes she'll drive by for me. Like, she gave the new tenant the keys. Like, so I don't do it alone, for sure. Like, I have help. However, it can be challenging sometimes. It can be challenging sometimes, but thankfully, technology and having tenants who are pretty independent helps.
That makes all the difference.
I would like to go out there and show it to my wife. My wife hasn't seen it, so I would like to go out there just so she can see what it is I'm talking about in person. So maybe we can get out there this year at some point, but it's been a minute.
That's so dope that you've been able to do it. And I think that, like, you're right, this the property, the tenants, all that makes a difference. I know people who own property out of state who have literally never been to that state. Like, they own 4, 5, 6 properties. They're like, I've never even been there at all. And so it's definitely possible. And so I do want to encourage anyone listening that don't let my story scare you. Like, everybody's just different. There are some properties we've had that just completely run themselves, and some don't. So it's interesting. But that also goes back to like the book and like the different stories that are told. It's just so dope seeing how everyone approaches things differently, like how everyone is creative with financing and like how they're using real estate as a tool to reach financial freedom. And the ups and downs everyone's been through. Like, it's just really cool to learn from how everybody is out here getting it. It's cool.
Definitely, definitely. So something that I've seen you talk about, and I don't believe we've had any guests with experience in this particular area, is travel nurses. And right now,
Mm-hmm.
the travel nurses. And it's funny. I believe that a friend of mine had asked me something about short-term rentals or one thing or the other, and I'm like, yeah, I know somebody. She does. She's worked with travel nurses. That's something you can consider if you want to do short-term rentals. So I'd love if you
Mm-hmm.
could talk some more about how you even learned that was uh, a viable option and what that has been like for you.
Yes. Oh, see, here's another thing I haven't talked about before. You're getting all this. So
All
yeah,
the
you're getting all the
tea.
tea. So remember I told you once we left our government jobs, we were going to travel the world for a year. So we sold
Mhm,
our house and we lit like our primary residence. We sold it. We were going to buy like a condo in DC to be our home base. So we could like come back every now and then, like I said, we like to
mhm.
see our properties. Um, that's when we found out we were pregnant. So we're like, okay, we've sold our house. We were going to buy this small little condo that actually fell through. So now we need to settle down. It just so happened around that time that our tenant in our Baltimore property moved out. And so we're like, okay, we can just live in there for now until we figure out our next step, which that's a blessing of owning properties, right? It's like, oh, we just have this place we can live in. We moved all of our furniture into this 2-bedroom condo. And then a neighbor moved in below us that was smoking. And I was pregnant. And it was like the whole apartment just always smelled like smoke. We were really nervous
Wow.
about like the side effects. So then we're like, man, we got to move again. So we ended up moving into another one of our properties that happened to come empty. It was so stressful, like being
Wow.
pregnant, moving, not knowing what our next step was. But anyway, because we left all that furniture in that Baltimore property, we were trying to figure out like, how can we rent this furnished? So I'm literally just Googling like furnished rentals, looking at corporate rentals and stuff like that, and came across
Mhm.
travel nurse rentals. And we did it. We loved it. We've been doing it for like 3 years now. And I feel like it's caught on. I feel like I was the first person talking about it. I'm not gonna lie. Now everybody's doing travel nurse rentals. I need Furnished Finder to like cut me a check because I really do. I feel like 30% of the people on their site right now probably heard about it because of me, but it's a really cool rental strategy.
Definitely, definitely. And how's it typically structured? Like some people, like I'm from, I have a friend or two who have considered or who have done travel nursing. But can you explain just like as like why would a travel nurse be like a good tenant for a period of time?
Yeah, travel nurses are great tenants. So travel nurses travel every 3 months to different hospitals around the United States. And so if you think about short-term rentals versus long-term rentals, short-term rentals make way more money than long-term. So you think about like Airbnb, vacation homes and stuff like that. But travel nurse rentals is like this sweet spot because you're making that short-term rental money, which is really good, but you don't have that constant turnover of an Airbnb. Because with Airbnb, you might have a new guest every 2 days, every 3 days, right? The cleanings, the all that stuff to manage. With travel nurse rentals, you're only going to have 4 tenants a year, right? So only 4 turnovers because they're staying every 3 months. So that's what I love about it is that short-term rental money, but without the high volume of turnovers.
Definitely. And then don't
Yeah.
some of them get like living stipends from whatever company they're working with to cover like somewhere to stay?
Yeah, I haven't had any like of the companies pay me directly before or pay us directly
Mhm.
before. It's always come from the nurse, but they probably do get reimbursed. I do know some people who have like um, dealt with the companies directly, but I haven't. One thing I will say to note about travel nurses is that a lot of them travel with pets. And so if you are considering it, but you don't want pets in your rental, you may have more vacancy than not because and this is just my perception. I think traveling constantly probably gets lonely, and a lot of them
Mhm.
do travel with pets. So if you don't want pets, you may not get as many bookings.
Definitely, definitely. And something else that I'm thinking about relating to that is like presumably these folks work a lot they're probably just coming home, want to relax, want to chill, or out
Yeah.
exploring the city. So I would assume the wear and tear may not be as, and I mean, it's not like they're coming with like 5, 6 people, hopefully not, but
No,
presumably the wear and tear is much lighter with those folks, I would think.
it's much lighter. So they, yeah, they're working. They just want to come home and relax. We haven't had any issues with any of the nurses. And the one thing I will say to look out for too is just the fact that they get their schedules really last minute. So they could be in Pittsburgh today, and then they just find out that, okay, a week from now or 10 days from now, you need to be in Orlando. And so you do get booking requests a little like last minute, what some people would consider last minute. You could get a request today saying, hey, is your place available in 7 days? And so the timing can be a little interesting. Like you could be getting requests from somebody while you have a tenant in there. You have to turn down requests. And then once that tenant leaves, there just could be a lag. You're not going to like have a tenant move out on April 2nd and then the next one move in April 3rd. It's highly unlikely it'll be like that tight. And so just get prepared for like a little bit of vacancy in between.
Definitely. Now, are there certain like websites or portals that an owner should go to, or that nurses usually look for to find housing?
Yeah, Furnished Finder. Furnished Finder is the one that I use the most, but I have also used Transplant Housing. And so it's a little different from Airbnb, because you know how like through Airbnb, the payment is processed through Airbnb. There's like an insurance, they have a claims process if something. It's not like that with Furnished Finder and like Transplant Housing. They're basically a matchmaker. And so the payments are handled offline. Like you have to figure out how you're going to get paid and stuff like that. That's one big difference. One tip I'll also give you guys too, if you are thinking of doing travel nurse rentals, is that we always we record a video of the property and we upload it to Google Drive, and we always share that with people if they're interested in booking, because they're booking this sight unseen. They're going to be living there for like 3 months. And I think that really makes a difference, especially because our property's in Baltimore. Maybe that's why I do it, because people have this perception of Baltimore and they're like, is it safe? Like everyone, is it,
Yeah.
I'm like, yes, it's safe. Like, this is not what you see on the news. And so we have like literally a full walkthrough of like the outside the property, like inside. And that really makes a difference for people.
Definitely. Yeah. I mean, I think it's something for people to certainly consider, because it's like an in-between, it sounds like to me, because, of course, you have your regular tenant, 1-2-year lease. You have your Airbnb, which a big concern for people is that it's it can be so hands-on depending on how you do it. As you mentioned, like you could have somebody every couple of days type of thing.
Yeah.
Whereas the travel nurse, it seems like it's almost like a happy medium. Where, I mean, I didn't even think about it that way until you mentioned it. Like when you said 4 tenants per year. So, I mean, that seems manageable, as if you have the systems in place, you figure out a flow of how to get people and stuff like that. I mean, it could be an option for someone who is looking for that in between. So I like that a lot.
Yeah, it's been really good. And I think it's also great for someone who's like renting out a basement or renting out a room in their house, because you don't have the constant like strangers in your space. And also, I like this better than like a long-term tenant if I'm renting out a space in my house or a basement, because that long-term lease, you might not like them. Like they might actually get on your nerves. But knowing that in 3 months, that person's going to be gone if it doesn't work out, I think that's pretty cool.
Definitely. It brought something to my memory. So I moved to LA in 2016, and I stayed in the Airbnb in a room in somebody's house through Airbnb. And the person in the next room was a travel nurse. I just forgot all about that.
What?
Yeah, that was like, it's about 6 years ago. So that's crazy. So I guess she was that lady who owned the house was on to something back then.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. It's been like a rental strategy for so long, but I think that I was slightly joking earlier when I said it's like all due to me that no, I think the pandemic did bring it to the forefront that travel nurses were like in such high demand. And so it's a really great strategy to consider.
Definitely. And so I want to talk about one of your Instagram posts that I saw that I thought was pretty cool. It was about just what you would say to I think it was what you would apologize to one of your first tenants about noise and such. So could you talk a little more about that? For those of you, maybe you didn't see the post, you should check it out. But I just wanted to talk a bit more about that. And I think it sheds a lot of light on, perspective changes and we learn as we grow through this real estate journey. So I'd love if you could talk a little bit more about that.
Yes, when we house hacked our 4-unit property, we lived downstairs in a unit that was downstairs, and we had a tenant above us that had 2 small children, and they were loud. And so in the post, I say literally all day, it sounded like they were bowling and riding a horse at the same time. And I was constantly nagging and bugging this tenant, like, please, can you just keep the noise down? Like, y'all are so loud. Like, I started wearing earplugs around the house. I was wearing headphones. It was so annoying to me. And I couldn't understand, like, how are little humans so noisy, right? And she would always just say, like, oh, they're just being kids. Like, I'll do what I can, but they're just being kids. And I said that in the post, I really feel like I should email her and apologize, because I would nag her all the time. But now that I'm a mom I only have 1 kid, a 2-year-old, and we have a 2-story house now. And so I literally I'm downstairs in my own home. Like, I want to call the manager right now and complain, because this child is massively loud. And I get it. Like, everything a kid does is like an Olympic sport. Like, she could be walking across the house or across the floor to get a toy, and it's like, flip, back flip, like roll on the ground, stomp 5 times. And so I'm like, dang, I was nagging that lady and there was literally nothing she could have done. So that is like a full circle moment for me, and also a warning to anyone who is thinking of house hacking. If you're noise sensitive, you might not want to put someone with kids above you. Just, throwing that out there.
Expert tip right there.
Seriously, save yourself some stress.
Definitely. So something else I want to make sure we talk about is just your brand and your business, the key resource. I made note of a couple of the resources that helped me out, when I first started investing. So I had the 90-day financial action plan, the download top 5 fears of real estate investing. And, I've been following you even before I had the podcast. And so,
Oh, wow.
Your resources have helped me quite a lot. So I want to make sure we have some time so you can talk about everything you offer, how people can be part of that. In addition, of course, we're going to plug again to get in acres. Let's talk a bit more about that.
Yes. And I'm like, wait, I don't even think I said the name of the book either when I was talking about it.
I think we did.
You did. Okay. Yeah. But you'll have all that information. Honestly, like, in the past year or 2, I have really put all of those like courses and ebooks on the back burner, and I've been solely focusing on this book. So like the action plan and all that kind of stuff, I really haven't been advertising it as much. The focus has really been on getting this book out. But I do have a membership called the First Time Homebuyer Society, and it's for anyone who's buying their first home or first rental property. And so it's like a monthly membership group coaching program. So that's something I have. But other than that, I've really been focusing on the book, nurturing my Facebook group. I have a free Facebook group that is phenomenal, full of like experienced and aspiring real estate investors. Are you in the group?
I don't think I am, but you know what? Actually, I think I am. I think I am in the group.
Yeah, the conversations that we have in there are just so dope. Like the questions that are asked, the conversations, the advice. Absolutely love my free group. And then on like Instagram, I've been partnering. On Instagram, I've been partnering with a lot of brands to like teach my audience via that platform. And so you'll see like a lot of sponsored content with brands that I actually use and love, but I'm partnering with them to bring like educational content to my audience. And so I really have a lot of fun with that too. So hopefully that answers your question.
Yeah, definitely. It's a whole lot for people to tap into.
Yeah.
So as we get closer to the end, what are, you've been investing for a long time. So what are some, if you could condense like your tips and your lessons that you've learned over the years to someone who is listening to this podcast and like, wow, that's really cool. Like, I want to invest, but I don't know where to start. I'm kind of scared. It seems like it's overwhelming. What are some things you would say to somebody in that position?
Yeah, two things. One is to make sure you start out with a money goal in mind, because it's way easier to back into what that looks like for you where you are. Like if you're like, hey, I want to make an extra $500 a month in rental income, it's like, how many properties do I need where I'm at to do that? And like in your instance, you're like, well, I can't even do it where I'm at. I need to go out of state, right? And so starting with the money goal in mind helps you work backwards to get to where you need to be. Secondly, once you get that property, or once you're looking for those properties and analyzing deals, make sure that you put yourself in a position to pivot, because people often see a property and say, oh, I'm going to put that on Airbnb and make $4,000 a month. The numbers are great. What if Airbnb doesn't work out? What if you have to put it on Section 8? What if you have to rent it to college students? Is it still going to be profitable? And are you still going to reach your money goals? A lot of people are buying properties that have no room to pivot. And that's when they're in trouble, right? Airbnb regulations change in your city, and now, or your HOA, if there's a homeowners association, they say no more short-term rentals. What are you going to do? Now you're in the negative. So make sure you put yourself in a position to pivot.
Definitely. And lastly, where can people find you and follow you? Where can they purchase the book and tap into everything you have going on?
Yeah, so you guys can find me on Instagram at The Key Resource. And once you're there, just click the link in my bio. If you guys want to pre-order the book, Acres, you can go to getyouracres.com. And I didn't even say what inspired the name of the book. I'm like literally
go for it.
Let me tell y'all why I called it Acres. But it's really, really quickly, it's paying homage to the whole idea of 40 acres and a mule. The reparations that we were supposed to get that we never got. And the point of it is, you guys, is that we're getting it on our own, despite everything that was put in front of us to fail. And that's why the book is called Acres. Forget 40 acres and a mule. We over here getting it on our own. So you can go to getyouracres.com to pre-order your copy. You can find me on Instagram at The Key Resource. And it was super fun talking to you guys today. So if you have any questions or just want to say hello, y'all can DM me and tell me that you heard me on the Black Real Estate Dialogue podcast.
Definitely. Really appreciate it, Kendra. It's good catching up and seeing how things are going. I'm glad things are going well. So excited about the book and checking that out. And so really, really appreciate you coming by again.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Definitely, no problem. And then thank you to everyone for listening to another episode of the Black Real Estate Dialogue podcast. If you haven't already, please make sure to leave us a 5-star rating and review. You will get a shout out. Really appreciate your support. I look forward to hearing from you all soon.
Hi everyone, Sam here from the Black Real Estate Dialogue. Make sure to hit that notification bell and that subscribe button, and to visit us at blackrealestatedialogue.com.